war, ecological collapse. What if these aren't actually separate crises? What if they're just two symptoms of the exact same problem? Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful sermon that offers a single, kind of radical idea to take on both of them. It's called green grace, and it's a concept that might just reframe our entire relationship with the planet. So the source material we're looking at today really doesn't pull any punches. It just throws us right into the deep end, into a world that's on the brink of catastrophe, using a scenario that feels, well, terrifyingly real. Okay, so the sermon lays out this hypothetical but plausible timeline. It all kicks off on June 13th with a preemptive strike. And just look how fast it escalates. Within days, you have massive retaliation, a hospital gets hit, and suddenly the U.S. is pulled into the fight. By the 24th, a shaky truce is in place, but the point is made. This is how fast things can spin out of control. And beyond the big picture politics, this sermon forces us to look at the real human cost. An estimated 600 to 900 civilian deaths in Iran. It's a stark reminder that these aren't just numbers on a screen, right? We're talking about families, communities, just shattered by all this. But here's the thing. The sermon argues this kind of human conflict isn't happening in a bubble. It's happening at the same time as this other, slower-moving catastrophe. Our oceans are choking on plastic, our forests are vanishing, biodiversity is just collapsing, all under the massive shadow of climate change. The source has a name for this, the groaning of creation. So you've got war on one hand and ecological destruction on the other. And this is where we get to the real heart of the sermon's argument, where it starts to connect the dots between these things that seem so separate. And that brings us to the big question, the one this whole explainer is really built around. Are we just facing a bunch of random, unrelated disasters? Or is there a single, much deeper problem that connects the violence we do to each other with the violence we do to the planet?
And here it is. This is the sermon's radical reframing of the whole problem. The argument is that the true crisis, it isn't political. It's not even environmental, not at its core. It's theological. It's a crisis of broken relationships between us, the world around us, and the divine.
So, what's the solution? This is where we get to the central concept that the sermon proposes, this idea called green grace. Let's actually unpack what that means. The term in Korean is noksik in chung, and the idea is pretty simple but profound. You take the traditional concept of grace, divine love and forgiveness, usually focused on people, and you just expand it. Green grace says that divine favor isn't just for humans, it's for everything. Animals, plants, rivers, the whole ecosystem. The sermon cites the theologian J. McDaniel, who puts it so beautifully. He says it's a flow of divine presence through all life. And think about what that does. It completely changes your perspective. The natural world stops being just a resource for us to use, and it becomes something sacred all on its own.
So let's break this down. On the left, you've got the traditional view of grace. It's almost all about the relationship between God and humanity, right? But the view on the right, this creation-inclusive grace, doesn't get rid of that. It just builds on it. It says that divine care also extends to the soil under our feet, the stars, literally everything in between.
Okay, so you might be wondering, where does an idea like this even come from? Is it just made up? Well, the sermon actually argues that it's rooted right in Christian scripture, and we're going to walk through that logic right now.
The whole argument really kicks off with this passage from Colossians. Now, notice the specific words here. It doesn't say firstborn of humanity. It says firstborn of all creation. That one little change in wording is a huge theological shift. It puts Christ at the origin point of the entire universe, not just us.
And it keeps going. The next verse says, all things were created through him and for him. The sermon's interpretation here is that all things means, well, all things, not just people, but the very systems of the world, nature itself. It suggests everything has its own purpose, its own value. Then you get this phrase, in him all things hold together. And the sermon's take on this is really powerful. It suggests that the fundamental rule of the universe isn't just competition and survival of the fittest. It's cooperation. It's this incredible, interconnected web of life that's meant to work in harmony. And this
this is really the climax of the whole argument. The goal of divine reconciliation is for manmul, that's the Korean word used here, and it means all things. This isn't just about reconciling humanity to God anymore. We're talking about healing the broken relationships in the entire cosmos, on earth and in heaven.
All right, so let's say you're on board with this idea of green grace. So what? What are you actually supposed to do about it? This next part moves us from the what to the so what, from the theology to the practice. The sermon uses this incredibly powerful image from the prophet Isaiah, beating swords, instruments of death, into plowshares, which are tools for cultivating life. This becomes the central metaphor for our role in all this, to actively help transform systems of destruction into systems of creation and care. And that leads us to this second key term, green vocation, or noksexomyon. Now think of it this way. If green grace is the principle, the why, then green vocation is the practice. It's the how. It's the calling, the job description for how to respond to that grace by becoming peacemakers for both people and the planet. And according to the sermon, this job boils down to a clear 3-part mission. 1. Actively work to stop war. 2. Respond directly to the climate crisis. And 3. Work to restore that broken relationship between us and the natural world. It's a call to become caretakers in a very, very real way. So, we end where the sermon ends, with a challenge. This isn't just about an interesting theological idea. It's a question that's being put directly to us. What kind of worldview, what kind of faith is actually up to the task of facing the crises we have today? Is it one that stays focused only on us, or is it one that calls us to be peacemakers for an entire planet?